Recording now. Okay. Welcome to Titled, a VCT podcast. I'm Strong. This is Salah. Let's dispense with the niceties. Let's just get right into it, yeah? So, this is going to be a podcast about VCT. We're going to do this on a weekly basis. We're going to go through everything. We're doing this going into stage one rather than kickoff. You know, we've had a bit of a late start to the podcast because, you know, a certain life goes a certain way sometimes, you know. I wasn't expecting to be doing this podcast 10 days ago, let's put it this way. But, I mean, I don't think Salah was expecting to be doing this podcast a year ago. Then life went a certain way. So, and close to 2 years now. But you know how it is.
Everyone gets kicked eventually.
You did your side quest. You had your little side quest in Rivals as well. You know, he's looking for team. You know, jump on that.
We're both looking for team.
Both looking for team. Jump on that. You know. Okay, but we're going into stage one now. So stage one's format is going to be pretty brutal for teams starting out, because the way the format works is essentially top team gets a bye in playoffs, 2 and 3 go to upper bracket, 4 goes to the lower bracket. Now, because there are 3 teams qualifying from each region, what this essentially means is the first seed is super, super important. Because you get first seed, you win 1 game in playoffs, 1 game, you're in the next event, you're in Masters London. So, immense pressure on teams to get it right off the bat here, basically. And we've had the first week of results, first 2 weeks in one case. So, we're just going to go around the leagues real quickly. We're going to talk about the results, and then we're going to get deep on a few games. So, yeah, let's start with China. So, China, as we say, let's get this on here. China's had 2 weeks of games. We won't pretend to be experts on the region in general, but obviously we know something about it.
I need to watch more of.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's, I mean, you can see from the spread this week basically that 12 games, 10 of them went to the favourites. Not really many upsets in China apparently. The 2 big upsets of the week: Tyloo taking down Bilibili Gaming 2-1, FPX taking down All Gamers 2-0. Not massively remarkable games from either of them. Tyloo being 2-0 is interesting. This is a team that has kind of in the past been pretty. They've done well. They flattered to deceive in the regular season a little bit. They've got Splash and Irv. They've got 2 new duelists in this split. I think the meta might be going a little bit in their way, to be fair. With those 2 duelists, I don't think they're particularly natural wailing the young guys, but on the slower duelists, they're pretty good. We could see Tyloo at an international event easily, so we'll be keeping an eye on that as the season goes on. EDG 2-0. You can see we got like the odds there. Very easy games for them. They were expected to win. They brought in GenG back, got rid of CB. Might have a chance with this lineup, to be fair. They've never really recovered from this loss. Like Sally, you know this, right? There's a bit of a double-edged sword when you have a core that's going for that long, as EDG have in esports, where they're always going to be consistent. They're always going to do well. Like they've had 3 or 4 players playing for this entire time. But you then taking them to the next level, taking them to international events, and then going all the way, because the core is there, you can't really change the core. It becomes a little bit hard. So EDG, we'll see what they do internationally. But to be fair, GenG's been there for on and off for a while now, right? They might be building something this. I don't know.
What you see with those kinds of teams as well is that generally one piece of the core has to change for them to break through the barrier, kinda. So you always see them being one change away from actually going back to the level they should be, almost, in my opinion. Because with those kinds of teams, it's always, you stagnate quite easily when you've been the same core for so long and haven't had any real upward mobility, which I don't think EDG have had any upward trend really, have they, for a while.
Not since champs, basically. They got Simon in, they did well, and they changed the coach or whatever. They did well with Simon, they kicked Simon, they've never been really the same since, and yeah. Shout out to Jaila, the other 2-0 team as well. Obviously, NRG, we played against them at Santiago. Low key, I think they could be interesting going forwards. So they're a team that obviously has certain barriers on them always, because they have to deal with the language issue and stuff like that. That's always a big thing for these teams which could be monolingual but aren't. Keep an eye on this WS Leo kid. So when I was prepping for that, we played them in Santiago, we beat them 2-0 pretty comfortably, right? But when I was prepping for them, I was really impressed with this Leo kid. Apparently he's also their IGL. Really crisp aim, really smart in terms of, he takes off his namesake, really smart in terms of playing Initiator, playing how he plays Util, all that sort of stuff. And He was pretty poor at Santiago statistically, but I think it'll get better. I think it'll be interesting to watch. But that's that for China. So now we move on to APAC. 1 week of games here. 2 upsets, no, not massive upsets. Global versus GenG, right? Kind of seems like Global have GenG's number weirdly. They seem to be a team that's kind of just... I think Global are pretty anti-heavy. GenG are surprisingly weak against anti in general. I know when we played them at Super, it was kind of the same. Foxy9 is back for GenG. That's going to be blamed for everything. I don't know why Foxy9 keeps getting dropped from teams in the first place. He always seems to be a really aggressive player. I guess he's the kind of player that annoys you as a coach and annoys you as another player, because he's like... I remember we were playing them on Haven, and it was like, oh yeah, the anti... We were playing GenG on Haven, the anti was like, yeah, just Foxy9's just going to sit in his own Molotovs the entire time on Haven seafront site, and it's really annoying. Stuff like that, right? Any thoughts on the global GenG thing? We'll talk about it more later, but any big picture thoughts?
I mean, it kind of looked like GenG was trying to play a way they played 2 years ago, whereas GE don't. GE kind of play a little bit more for this meta, despite their coach kind of hating it. They kind of have figured out at least their style within the meta and are abusing the correct things, whereas GenG, they seem flat. Most of the game was kind of GenG trying to play an old style, getting caught off guard. No matter how many advantages they had, they would always give one back on the other side of the map, like within 10 seconds. And it kind of just like GenG just didn't know what to do almost, and GE just ran at them over and over again, and with different momentum shifts and different tempo, but each time just caught them off guard in some way. And I don't know whether some of those things were planned by GE, but if they were, kudos to them. If they weren't, then it just seems like GenG got caught by the natural ebb and flow of the game that it currently is. Yeah,
it means fair play. And this is the second time they've done this in like 2 months as well. Global beat them 2-1 in kickoff. I'm not sure if you saw that, but yeah. Around the league in general, other than that, obviously Nongshim, PRX. So the format we're going to do is we're going to like briefly talk about these regions, and then we're going to go into in depth on a few more maps and a few more games. Nongshim PRX is one we're not going to be going into a huge amount of depth on, which I think people will be a little bit surprised by. But to be fair, this wasn't an amazing series. The first game was Fracture. Neither team know how to play Fracture yet. So Jing put up like 36 and lost. It was just a very messy map. Third map was 13-6 towards PRX. It wasn't really close. I believe it was Breeze. I might be getting that wrong. But second map was genuinely pretty good. They played on split. Nongshim ran their old comp. They swapped out Yoru for Neon, essentially. Very strong map for Nongshim in general. We banned against them during the best of 3 because we thought their second strongest map. Maybe a mistake in retrospect, who knows. But the way they play is like, on attack, very, very expansive. They go out, they grab all the space. They're a little bit reliant on traps and gambles on defense. PRX played a comp which might just be a Nongshim counter comp. Jet, Raise, Sky. Really interesting as an approach. It's hard to play on defense, but on attack, you're given the capacity to meet where they stand, basically. You move fast, but you're moving fast in like a poppy way. Like, it's not quite contact. Obviously, the emea has this concept of contact from CS, right? Where it's just, you walk around, you do nothing, and then you wait to come to your crosshairs. It's a little bit like that. If you're playing Poppy, and this is more of an NA thing, you're playing kind of contact, but you do have like one person with you till out. You're waiting to basically meet contact and then go with you to quickly, rather than blitzing them. But yeah, it worked well. It was 6-6 half to start. PRX played the second half really well. That was a good map, but the series in general was not the best. Apart from that, not too much.
Mind you,
go.
Mind you, Sky Jet Raise is kind of PRX's bread and butter. They've been running that for like 4 years, almost 5 years. So anywhere that they can play that, they'll be comfortable.
Yeah, true. But yeah, apart from that, around the league, T1 pretty easy 2-0 against Valorant. Full Sense pretty easy 2-0 against DFM. I did take a look at this game just to see if because May had like insane numbers on Pearl, but he was kind of baiting a little bit. They were playing in positions where potentially he would get traded within like a millisecond. So the numbers made it look better than it was. One of those, but not particularly close. DRX destroyed Secret, RIQ destroyed Zeta. And yeah, that's it for APAC. Going round to EMEA. Fnatic get over the line versus EF, right? That was the opener of the week. Surprisingly close game. Don't know if you have any thoughts
Prison
on that.
Valorant. That was a Prison Valorant game, I like to call it. It was just... for some reason, it always ends like this with Fnatic, where whenever they play against one of these Turkish teams who just run or just peak everything, rather, it turns into Prison Valorant. Because Fnatic players have obviously the ability to match that and even better, right? So at the start, you always see it that Fnatic kind of struggle or get caught off guard by what the enemy team is doing. Generally Turkish. I remember this even with like the old BBL with like Suchny and you know, Kushner X, how they used to struggle against, how Fnatic used to struggle against them as well. It just turns into prison Valorant, but eventually Fnatic always kind of win those matchups. But yeah, it wasn't pre-Valorant, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, a win's a win for them. Like I say, it's so much focus on getting the first seed from these groups. There'll be for these teams. Like, you lose week 1, makes it so much harder. But they got the win, so fair enough.
Yeah.
Liquid, pretty comfortable win over Carmine. Vitality, pretty comfortable win over Giants. Ara kind of imploded on this map, towards the end of this series. He's had a habit of this now. Like, my working theory on it, he went 1-8 on first kills, first deaths on Pearl. He was like dying first every single round. There is a thing I think I had with them where there's a possibility that the thing that's screwing Giants a lot in this meta, because they were like very obviously surprise champs run last season. They play like almost too slow for this meta, because they obviously that it's a Pipson team. The entire thing basically is they walk around, they contact in 25 seconds. So they're the only team in the world where the enemy is actually getting a chance to recharge their util before they hit, right? You can use your first knife and then use your second. Like, it was KO that destroyed them on that Pearl, to be fair as well. He was just he was just getting destroyed every single round. But yeah, that's I mean, to be fair, we probably would have expected Vitality to win still. M8 Foot 2-1 to Foot upset. Heretics Navi 2-1 to Navi upset. We're going to talk about both these in a little bit. And BBL Pacific 2-0 to BBL. Kind of looked close for a little bit, but it wasn't really. I mean, it
wasn't really that close in retrospect.
Yeah. So that's that for the leagues. Now we're going to move on to our... We're going to call them awards of the week. It's not necessarily going to be the best, quote-unquote, thing in whatever each thing we're doing. This is more like a thing to talk about games that we found interesting, performances we found interesting, all this sort of stuff, right? So we're going to run through these. We have 4 this week. So we're going to start with performance of the week. And we're going to start here with... Well, I'm not going to start here. We're going to... the performance we're going to be singling out this week was sociablEE, who played on Bind and completely destroyed Gentlemates. Yeah. Map 2. Getting up here. 23, 11, 13, 4 first kills, 2 first deaths on Brimstone. Most of that was on defense, 15, 7, 8 on defense. Yeah, like what I don't like. You've worked with sociablEE a lot in the past, yeah, Salah?
Yeah. It's hard to explain, but when sociablEE is playing good is when he has all of these timings in his head and every timing works for him, basically. When he's in his flow, he knows exactly when to peek an angle, he knows exactly when to walk an angle, he knows exactly how to play off of something else happening on the map, which I think he's one of the players that impressed me the most in my career with that, where he just intuitively knows how to play off of, first of all, what the enemy team is doing, second of all, what his team is doing. It's very hard for a lot of players to kind of be able to focus on what the enemy team is doing a lot of the time. They get very caught up in what you're doing yourself and what's not working yourself, but he notices tendencies a lot, he notices gaps a lot, and he uses those gaps. And when he's playing good is when he's kind of just walking through areas of space without check, almost like old Pora style, where he's just walking, basically. And everything works for him. That's kind of what he looks like when he's good,
Yeah.
This is what happened this game.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was going to say, it's interesting that you frame it like this, essentially. See if I get this up.
He's definitely one of the smartest players I've ever had in my career, though, where in terms of like when he's on, he's on. He knows exactly what's happening everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that you frame it this way, because I have a few clips. I think you can see these. Yeah. So they started out They started out struggling on this map. They start out 2-5 down in the end. He's doing what he can do individually. It's kind of hard to have impact on defense as a Brimstone. He's pretty much playing the spot in. You can see a spot in Hooker every single round for like the first 3 or 4 rounds. Just doing what he can to maximise space and to let them play elsewhere on the map. This comp also, to be fair, not an amazing defensive comp. You've got the Waylay Neon. I guess the Skye's okay, but the Skye's more so getting you info and be able to really stop anything. You've only got 1 piece of util for that. But he's doing what he can to maximise space for them. It's another round here. He's dragged. This is where he starts turning around. He's dragged his entire team into baths. They're sort of fighting it out from baths. They got early picks on baths here. just very good, very clean take here. And like he basically brings it back to, I think it was 5 or 6 rounds on defense in the end, but very, very good. They get to attack, they lose the pistol, they win every gun round on attack, and he's making a lot of like these very insane, like very good micro plays, just getting value goal all the time, essentially. Like this, I think this was his best round here. I want to say, yeah, like many gentlemen tried to push down here.
You see how he's just walking through smokes almost. He knows his timing, and he's doing this based off what's happening in long. You know, he knows based off the pressure where he can walk and where he can't walk.
Yeah, it's extremely heads
up. He's playing every timing perfectly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Extremely heads up play. But that's very good performance from him. What do you think about Foot's prospects going forward into this season? Because obviously they've kind of been in organ decline for a little bit while, if you want to put it that way. On the Valorant side, they've struggled for a while. Last time they qualified for a big event was, I believe, Shanghai. Was it Shanghai?
They would have qualified for Korea. They qualified for Champs Korea as well that year.
Yeah, so it's been a while since this team was like, because we kind of always noticed this team as like, this is the good team out of this is the good Turkish team. This is a team that can actually go to events. This is a team can threaten to like do stuff essentially. And last year they bring in Zeus. They bring in a very hyped player. Doesn't really do much for them. Yeah, they went to champs. They went to champs in Korea. They got 0-2 both games. But yeah, like
the thing about them is,
go.
I think, were going to always struggle with the thing that CS teams historically struggled with. In CS, you had a lot of a lot of single country teams, right? Just Swedish teams, whatever, Swedish teams, German teams, Danish teams. They were going to struggle with the same thing, where eventually you hit a point where if you're really good, like Foot were for the first 2 years of franchising, and you over-exceed your expectations, you're going to hit a point where you stagnate because of the incoming talent, right? Mm-hmm. The weird thing about them is that they didn't have a lack of incoming talent from Turkey, but they mistimed a lot of their moves. So I think they overstayed on a lot of key players in Foot and missed a lot of opportunities to bring in some of the Turkish players that were coming up, right? And then this year, I think for the first half of the year was where they really got unlucky, because two of the teams that you would have potentially taken, players from if you're Foot or BBL in the past would have been Ulf and BBL Pacific, right? But because they were good and because they qualified on their own in their own way, they weren't able to initially take. Now, taking a sub, for example, is a banger move. It's straight. I think this kid is fire. I think even a year ago when he was in DA, he was someone that I thought was amazing. I think obviously bringing a social was like a no-brainer. Like these moves were no-brainers almost. I think they're going to be like the heavier, like dark horse for this EMEA. I think they can match anyone when it comes to firepower if they're all having a good game. You're talking Zeus, Sop, Sociable, Yetuje. These players can match anyone on their day, right? Yeah. Then in general, I think Sociable is the kind of guy that does better when his team has this almost monoculture where it's just, I don't know how to explain it, but Sociable always does better in teams where they kind of empathize with each other and they all have a similar way of thinking about life and about the game. And I think this Foot team is going to be a lot more of that compared to Navi, which obviously had 3 or 4 different visions of how things are done and cultures. So yeah, I think these guys are going to be incredibly good this season. I don't know whether they'll qualify to the next LAN, London, but I would have them there personally. I can see them being very good.
That's a big call, yeah, because it's only 3 teams at the end of the day. But I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think they'll be on that 3rd to 4th, and it will just depend on matchups for them. Like I think there's a lot of matchups where it'll be really good for them. I think like Heretics matchup I want to see against them. I'm not sure is that a game they'll play this season.
Yeah,
but
they're in their group.
Yeah, so I want to see the Heretics matchup. I want to see Navi matchup as well. I think I have Foot on the Navi matchup specifically just because I think Turks do really well when you're playing for when there's a little bit of bragging rights on the line. Turks are really good, so I think they'll be really good in that Navi match based off of Sociable's calling. Yeah, but I can see them being that 3rd to 4th place.
Yeah, that's fair. Again, all the group they've got as well, they've got Liquid, Navi, Heretics, Gentlemates, and Carmine, and they've just beaten Gentlemates. So
yeah,
luckily,
and Carmine looks like a winnable game for them as well. Yeah, to be honest.
With week 1 being as important as it is, it's very easy, very very possible to get out of this group as play against first or second seed rather, play against they could play BBL as 3rd seed out of the other group, which would be a interesting matchup as well. Yeah, like things could easily go their way. Just align. The stars could align for them. I could see it. Yeah, so I mean, good luck to Foot. Talk a little bit about Gentlemates as well. They lost their head a little bit, felt in this series. I mean, it's going to be a tough thing to replicate the form from kickoff. They have, I don't know if you saw this, they apparently have brought in Rivera as another assistant coach. So, very experienced, very good coaching staff there. This is what Paco, Kundi, and Rivera. Just like the Titans.
It's a weird constellation of coaching staff. That I wouldn't have imagined those three are together in my life, but it like should work.
The Titans of Ascension, right? Like it's a good coaching staff. I mean, I'm interested to see what happens with them. But I don't have really.
I think they're going to struggle a lot because I think they were heavily propped up by the Euro meta. I think obviously having the best Euro in the world helped, and I don't want to dare say Martin is a one trick, but I do think there is a big disparity between his Euro gameplay and his other duelist gameplay, and I think they were big benefactors of that Euro meta. So I'm not sure if they're going to be able to. I think it's going to take a bit for them to capture the same level of success because I think they also succeeded almost too quickly as a team.
Yeah.
So I think when you're so good so quick, it's kind of hard to figure out why and replicate, especially when the meta changes as much as it did for them.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I think they have a good team, so I think they can definitely pull it back.
I mean, they could always go back to playing on Rays, you know.
I wouldn't even be surprised if they kind of emulate what Carmine Corp did in when they won kickoff, right? Where they're super sick for the first tournament and then kind of drop off a cliff after that. But I think with them it's more of a toss-up because they obviously do have a very talented team.
Yeah, and it's a very different style of coaching as well for everything I hear, so that makes a big difference, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. Next up, map of the week. And you're going to have a lot to say about this one. In fact, I think let's get the Valorant link open if you want.
Sure.
So look at that. Valorant. So this was we talked about it a little bit. We touched on it a little bit earlier. But this was GenG Global on Bind. So take it away. This is our map of the week. Again, this isn't like necessarily the best map of the week. This is the one we found most interesting. So let me also change my settings because I have these guys way too small. This was like a Bonko session. I had to have these guys tiny for some reason. Yeah, there we go.
Brim Deadlock Neon. I'm just trying to put in the characters for us, mate.
Yeah, all good.
Brim Deadlock Neon. Alright, so, I mean, first of all, this is an odd comp compared to what GenG are playing. I mean, GenG are playing muge more, I would say a little bit more standard. They're playing actually the Euro Neon, one of the first teams I've seen still play the Euro. But with Fade, Viper, Brim. GE opting to play without the Viper, replacing it with the Deadlock. This is something you saw towards the end of, I want to say 2024, 2024, where teams would interchange the Viper with a Sentinel. Like Cypher, I think, was quite common, especially from the APAC teams. So this is definitely not something that's unheard of. I have a lot of experience with this Deadlock, and I think it can be really, really good, and I think they utilize it super well. But this comp can cause issues for, in different, especially on defense. I think it's a hard comp to run, which is why you saw GE play almost the way they did. I think, first of all, on attack, I want to say this is game plan, but it felt very premeditated of what they wanted to do. So the pistol and the Antico, they start by just hitting inside, through hooker, through short, just fast, right? And they almost didn't care if there was especially on the Anticos, I was surprised the way they ran. They didn't care about Buckies. They just wanted to overwhelm completely, right? So they start off the game with this super fast momentum of just rushing. After this, they switch into these set pieces that you saw a lot with Gecko. Back in the day when it was meta, of course, the 100 Thieves comps, where of course you would, have the Gecko Molly landing here, you'd have a duelist running up behind this, kind of just trying to push anyone off of this area and just take all of this in one swoop, and then maybe you're going to, you're going to even smoke this off with Brim, right, and just take all of this. So they started with these set pieces, and the key thing was, and I think this is the reason I think a lot of what they did was really good and really well planned, was they would have Deadlock kind of play as a pure lurker until executes happened. She activated only as a character when the executes happened. Before that, she was just a gun, right? So you'd see her walk up into these spaces, just full contact, while they're taking this, for example, fast set piece on this area, and if this goes wrong, which you saw it go wrong a few times, you saw GenG punish it a few times, she would always find a way to get a kill back, whether it was GenG transitioning into empty space to try and just check, whether it was just GenG sleeping in general, they would always find a pick back. And then eventually what you saw would be, they would lose a pick here maybe, but get a pick back here, and then eventually they would go silent on the map for a wave, I would say. And then after that, they would kind of regroup into this area, and that's when the deadlock activates, and the deadlock becomes this almost, it's almost impossible to retake into a deadlock, in my opinion, because she just puts down walls, especially this wall here on CT, and then just plays a really good post plant, right? So that was kind of how they treated attack.
Yeah, I mean,
at the start.
One thing to say here as well, I mean, obviously, you as a team that's trying to defend against this, you can then say, well, what if you just commit resources to flushing out the deadlock? The problem is you have to commit resources to flushing out the deadlock. Like, you'd have to probably commit to playing in bars, you'd have to put a fade over there, and if you put a fade over there, then you lose a lot of utility on here, and it becomes super easy for the enemy team just to rush you, not for
especially when you're running double duelist, you're going to lack in like that util anyways. Especially with the Euro nerfs, you have one less flash, you have worse TP timers, so it's a lot harder for you to kind of contest this as GenG, right? I mean, GenG in general played hard for wings outside of a few set piece rush rounds on short. They were playing quite hard for wings in general, which makes sense with their comps, because once you have the wing control with this deadlock, it's really easy to take full sight and kind of overwhelm them, right? This comp is going to struggle more when you have to force through one choke almost. So they were playing hard for wings. So for example, if they'd play hard for this wing, they would have someone walk up and kind of contact on this one, right? After this, it was interesting because this is the first 3 or 4 rounds they full rushed, right? And they full rushed, and it was either they were full rushing a site or they were full rushing extremity. After this is when they kind of went into contacting more, and that's when you also saw the deadlock have a lot of value as a gun, where, again, you saw them contacting up long. As soon as they got contact, whether they lose the fight or win the fight, deadlock activates and takes this peak insta. And I want to say this is almost on purpose, and if they're doing this on purpose, it was really good, because it felt like he knew exactly when he had to take these timings and exactly how he had to either. It's not that he was trying to equalize all the most. It was almost that he was looking for the advantage, and it just happened that he was equalizing a lot of the fights, because GenG were getting picks on these extremities, but they were always losing to this guy, right? So you saw again on attack this kind of full rush into sites, contact, and then after this they would go kind of silent, contact, back into a site. And after this, again, you also saw just GenG getting caught off by the weirdest angles. Like, for example, this angle, they got caught off by like 3 or 4 times. They got caught off by people pushing back site a lot. They just, in general, didn't seem like they were ever aware that GE were going to peak the angles they were going to peak, and GE just didn't give a fuck. They didn't care about running into spawns. They didn't care about peeking out of smokes. They didn't care about, rushing kind of the fights. And GenG were just never ready for it, almost, and every advantage they had was lost to just walking into one of GE's crosshairs.
Yeah. I mean, this is a thing I think a lot of teams this is the thing in general in terms of a lot of my feeling in terms of how Valorant has evolved over the last year or two. It's kind of, because utility's been nerfed to the ground, it's kind of become a lot less important almost to macro as opposed to micro, in the sense of you need to know what angles they can pop out from, you need to know what angles are favoured for you, we need to know where they're how they're going to position, how they're going to move, all this sort of stuff, right? I think there's been a big focus on that, and GE are making they're making very good use of it in this game, right?
Yeah, I mean, this just seems like GE played at their tempo and played with momentum and changed the momentum a lot, and GenG just got lost basically from it. And every time GenG had an advantage, they would instantly lose.
Yeah,
it was because of how GE are playing and because of the mistakes GE are forcing.
Yeah, and then you go for the defense. It's a little bit. It's not as good. I mean, they get bonus. They get pistol, get bonus, right? But they do have to see that out.
One key thing I would say is GE. I forget who the anchor is. I want to say it's maybe Brim, but I forget 100%. GE did a lot of 4-1 starts on the deadlock side, right? And one thing about deadlock is she's super strong at holding down sites, but super bad at holding extremities. So I think their game plan was that they were going to have the full start here, they're going to pressure the extremities, they're going to basically force GenG to either use util or back off and wait a tempo to be able to take these, and then they're going to either full rotate off, or if GenG are going to push into A, for example, and catch the one side, they're going to insta-flank. That was their game plan. And it worked in a lot of situations where they would just walk, and almost as if they wanted to start most of the defenses from the attack side. they would always basically overwhelm where if this guy peaks and dies to the GenG guy, these guys would just insta clean up the round because again they were just kind of on them on all sides. And I think the deeper game plan was that they wanted to rotate off and leave the deadlock if the game was going to be slower. But because most of the time it just worked from them flanking, it worked from them basically either TP playing or coming back from short. You just saw them be super comfortable leaving this guy on an island while the rest of them play the game, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is the map with probably the shortest flanks, right, overall, I guess you'd say.
I think
this
they...
is short flank, this is, you have TP on here.
They also have to play like this because of the no Viper. They can't just leave deadlock at the start, right? So I think they're doing this as almost precautionary thing where they want to contest these areas and then leave the deadlock. And once you got GenG util and maybe kill the guy and maybe trade it, it's a lot easier for deadlock to then lock down this site, right?
Yeah, makes sense. But yeah, I mean, a solid performance overall. Obviously, they carried that through to the split. They just dominated them on the split. It wasn't as interesting. But that's how you make an upset, I guess. That's how you make it happen. And it'll be interesting to see how good this global team is going into the rest of the season. They do have, I believe, there was something like Frost was saying the groups are super lopsided. Yeah, they have because they have DRX, PaperX, and Longshim in their group. So it's still gonna be a hard run for playoffs. But I mean,
pretty sure there's like 3 grudge matches there for Frost as well. Where he's talking shit to like 3 of those coaches.
Yeah, I'm sure he's like he's got something going on with Team Secret as well. We don't know about because it's a secret, you know. Who knows? But yeah, so that's that. Now on to our match of the week. Again, you can give this to a couple of things. We're going with Navi Heretics. And obviously the concern over this map was that it would essentially be ruined by the visa situation because unfortunately Exit, the new player from Saudi, has not got a visa yet. They've had to sub in Kolosha, who I believe is on their academy team or their junior team. Yep. It's hard for Navi because Navi always have like 4 different junior teams every single thing. But in any case, I think he's just turned 18. He had to sub in. Didn't have a vintage performance personally at all, but team won.
I would say he had like a few. Obviously, there was moments where he was just getting banged out, right, and he looked nervous, which is normal, right? It's a big step. I think he only is really just getting into tier 2. So for going from like just getting into tier 2 to straight against Heretics is a feast or family game. He had a few big kills, but yeah, he was kind of getting overwhelmed a lot, I think.
Yeah, but even despite it. Obviously a difficult debut, but even despite that, this was a good series and this was a very good performance from Navi. So, I mean, we can go map by map. Map 1, we had the Pearl. We'll talk a little bit more about the Pearl later, I think, to be fair, because I think the Pearl comp from Heretics is interesting. We should talk about it in a little more detail. There is a theme going through these comps in the series. By the way, both of these teams are playing Chamber on every map, which I don't think I've seen many teams do in general. I think it kind of makes sense with both of their play styles. With Heretics, they're trying to basically get the most out of comeback. Like trying to enable him on the Navi side. Like Chambers just fits how Navi always wants to play, right? Particularly under Angel. Yeah. Map 2 obviously was defined by these 2 big. Let me get these up. So I think, to be fair, I don't know if you agree with this. I think the momentum in this series before these two big clutches was probably still tending towards Heretics. I don't know.
Heretics had this. Like, to be honest, this was all Heretics, and these 2 clutches just completely, I don't know, resulted in the head loss for Heretics. Like, before this, it was, I think, heavy Heretics favored, I would say.
Yeah. So obviously, this is. I mean, we're watching these now just to watch them. So this is the first one. Comeback gets a 4K. Cloak sneaks through the smoke, gets 2, 3.
I have a theory also about these situations where it's almost like impossible to win the 1v1 after you've seen 4 of your teammates die to one guy. I feel like there's so much pressure on you that it's just always like you're just always going to lose it, kind of.
Yeah. Like, I mean, it's hard for him as well. I mean, it's... Also, he's playing on Harbor, so like the entire reason Harbor is good in these situations is that essentially you should be able to win because you can just defuse. You just put your orb down, you defuse, but that relies on other people being alive around you. Playing a 1-on-1 with Harbor is just hard because you basically have to you have to basically gamble. You have to put like a random smoke down. You have to try and jump through the smoke and surprise them that way. That's like the only way you win is 1v1s at Harbor. Yeah, but then the very next round this happens. Again, they kind of it's a 1v3, I think. Yeah. I mean, the first one you can kind of excuse, right? Gets the ult off, forces them to basically play into this slow 1v2. I guess Benji's getting a gun there. Like the first one, okay, it was once it gets down to the 1v2, you can kind of excuse it. This round, they don't really have an excuse. They should be winning this round.
I can tell you also, Heretics are playing this more scared because what he did the previous round. Like, they gave him way too much respect on this one, for example. It's always a crime when you're shift walking into a 1v2. It's always like when you start shift walking as the 2-man into the one guy, it feels like it's always losable. Yeah. Whereas most of the time when you see teams just polishing those 2v1s, it's like when one guy is just jumping around, the other guy's playing for trade, you know? Yeah. And because they're confident in that. Whereas they didn't seem confident in the situation. Yeah. Then,
But I think the entire series just basically revolves those two clutches. Cloic kind of wasn't doing too amazing before that. I like Cloic a lot. I think he's I worked with him a tiny bit when he was in LG Academy as well. We were running like scout team games with them. He was very, very helpful, very smart about the game, very good in terms of getting his team to basically go along. Like we gave him an entire playbook basically to run. He just ran it. We played we played him on Corrode. They won like 19-5. They just demolished us before the G2 game. So. Like very, very good IGL, very smart technically. You got a coach.
I would say also his calling just seemed so much better after he won the clutches, which is just it's just always how it works with IGLs. Where as soon as they get like some blood rushing to their head, they just become Thanos. And it was like almost the case with him, where he won the 2 clutches, and then after that, he just instantly. All of his calls became so much better. His team started playing more aggressive. Ruxic especially started just peeking out of every smoke, and that's why also I think they started winning because, and I'm not sure if it's because of something Angel said maybe, or something he figured out, because I think with IGLs, once you have those insane like moments, it's a lot easier for you to process what's happening in the game because of confidence, I guess. And it's almost like they figured out how to play against Harbor mid-series after the clutches, where they started pushing through Harbor smokes, which is how you have to play against Harbor. You have to disrespect his util. And that's what they started doing. They started peeking out smokes. They started disrespecting the util sets and the execute sets, where, Navi, Heretics want to do this very, we're going to cut the site in half. We're going to take half of the site with Harbor, and then we're going to, take the second half with the other smokers util. Navi just disrespect it, play close to chokes, play close to the smokes, and just spam them to death, right?
Yeah.
And that's what you kind of saw after that, those 2 glitches.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're still competitive on Lotus. They're going to bind. Heretics actually gets off to a good start there. But then they just kind of fall apart later in the half. Maybe this be interesting to watch with this Navi team. It did seem in this series that they were improving quite a lot as you go on in the half, which is a generally good sign of an IGL, good sign for a coach in terms of stuff you're doing. Yeah. I noticed on Bind a lot of these later, like when they just start winning gun rounds over and over again, they basically start just bullying these setups that Comeback has on Chamber. So that's probably an in-game read they've made. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what goes on from here. I mean, Benji's Harbor as well. We haven't seen too much Harbor. I mean, I know you don't think the agent in general is particularly good. I'm a big Harbor fan, but I think it's one of those agents where it's quite difficult to play because you have to understand what you're doing with the smoke and the shield, and you have to that takes a long time to get a feel for. So it's not one of those agents that people can be able to pick up overnight after the changes.
I think it's also a lot easier to play once you've figured it out. Like, I think next week you'll maybe see these Harbor comps do a little bit worse because of it, right? I mean, it was only really Heretics that I saw play it, but I think once you realize how you're supposed to play against Harbor, it's very easy to abuse.
Yeah, I mean,
I will say about Cloic, one thing I noticed on Pearl as well is that he was very good at adapting to what Heretics was doing. I think that's a really good sign for him, how he's adapting mid-series, right?
Yeah. But yeah, I mean that it was a good series overall. I mean, it was very back and forth, very high quality of gameplay, I'd say. It can always be a little bit rough this week one as well because you've got new maps, you've got new comps, all that sort of stuff. Again, that's why I don't think Longshin PRX really. It wasn't bad, but it didn't really live up to the billing, right, in a sense. But this Navi series was good, even despite the unfortunate situation of substitution. Hopefully that gets resolved soon. Navi might be looking like a threat in that group, I don't know.
Yeah. Navi will always be a threat, I think.
Yeah.
I think for them it's going to be about just finding the perfect form to actually start winning.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on to our final category. We're going to go back to the Valor plant for this. This is going to be about Pearl and about this Heretics Pearl comp and and also T1's Pearl comp. So we already touched a little bit on this already, yeah. But let's keep going on it. So I'll let you open on this.
So just to pull the comp up, it was Neon Sky Harbor, Neon Sky
Harbor Astra Chamber.
Astra Chamber Harbor.
Yeah.
So first of all, you saw Heretics play their bread and butter. And Heretics' bread and butter is 3-2, with the 3 being active and the 2 holding space, and the 2 playing a little bit more aggressively than maybe other teams do, playing on site and never really for retake. While the 3-man, they start in a lobby and then they transition off into other spaces to either retake this, like a different space, or retake the same space, or just contest these ones. This is Heretics' bread and butter, right? They've been playing it like this for a long time. It works for them, obviously. The big thing you saw with Harbor is, I call this Loud style because this is what Loud used to do when they were really good, especially in like Sao Paulo, I remember, when they were using Harbor a lot, which is basically the Harbor, Sky, and Duelist. They're going to play aggressively at the start of the game, especially on A lobby. Harbor is going to come, he's going to smoke or wall. Neon's going to play behind this. Sky is, of course, going to flash through smokes or flash through just angles for Neon to peek, and then they're going to transition off into something else, right? And they did this basically for the first 4 rounds, this Loud style almost, where, again, they're contesting this, and then the Harbor util, you have to consider it basically, it's initiating util almost. They're using that to get them into the space, and then the Astra smokes and the Astra util is to keep the space. So what you'd see a lot is like the Harbor smoke, and then after this, the Astra smoke is going to replenish this, because Harbor doesn't have the same kind of smokes as them, so you're using it more as initiate util. Yeah. You saw, for example, a nice set piece from them on both sides, where they would basically come in with the Harbor wall and retake it after initially fighting it. And this was kind of how they wanted to play the game, right? And then the Chamber and Astra's job is just kind of to anchor. You would see Chamber playing these aggressive positions a lot while they're hitting, and the idea is that after Harbor has kind of taken this initial space, he's going to rotate off. He's going to maybe contest this, and then if there's going to be a hit on A or B, Harbor is going to run as fast as he can. He's going to split the site in half, and then whoever's anchoring on this site is going to play behind that wall. And it's super obnoxious to play against if you're not planning for it. If you get caught behind this wall, if you get caught behind running through the wall into angles that you don't have a flash to clear like Navi did, it's super hard. And I think this is why Navi struggled so much as well, is because the comps were a massive mismatch. In general, Harbor would get punished super hard by Sky, by Yoru, by basically characters that can flash through those walls and abuse those walls, whereas Navi didn't have that, right? They actually lacked a lot of that use to be able to do that. I think that's why you saw such a big mismatch, especially on the defense, where it finished like 8-4 for Heretics, I think, because they don't have anything to break down those, half-site walls. They don't have anything to break down those, they can't just flash through it. They can't just, abuse it almost, right? So I think that's why they struggled a lot. I think after that, you saw Harbor transition into a B anchor, which I think the logic, and Astra switching to A, and I think there's a few reasons they would do this, but I think one of the big reasons is and you saw this with the old Harbor meta in NA especially, where people used to play a lot of retake B with the Harbor, right? And it was the most obnoxious thing ever. And basically he's sitting here, he's starting by smoking here as almost fake pressure. And then his idea is he's gonna come back into site, and he's going to play, again, for his wall, and he's going to never play this retake. He's going to play this for flood. He's going to, wall half of the site, spam this side while his team rotates in, and it works so well for them. It just, in general, it's so hard to break down without flashes, right? So, you're constantly sectioning off the site and forcing them to push through Harbor walls, and eventually you're going to have a good angle that kills them. That's how he was playing, right? He was playing this B anchor. He was playing to, sometimes, for example, one round they had a good setup where, he was here, and they full retake this with Harbor wall cutting off this site. They just played this Harbor perfectly on this defense, I think. And after that, on attack, you just saw the standard Harbor stuff, where the standard Harbor way of executing is to section off site, right? And it's Harbor's bread and butter. Basically, we're going to, have, for example, Astra smokes here. We're going to cut half the site. We're going to take half of the site with util, and then once we're ready, we're going to Harbor wall, even further and take the full site. And that's how we used to play Harbor in Vitality, and that's how they're playing Harbor as well. And it's super good, I think. It's like, again, Loud style, Harbor style, where basically you just treat every site as half a site, and you take half, and then you push through the smokes and take the second half, basically.
Yeah. The one point of frustration you've got with the new harbour, and this is the thing in general, that new harbour feels like a downgrade to the old harbour. You don't have the pushing wall anymore, and that is like a big loss, to be fair. But which is why obviously nobody's trying to run single harbour anymore. Like, it wasn't good then, but no one's even trying it anymore. I think it's interesting, right? I think a lot of this also, to be fair, is being enabled by the fact, like, that people feel very comfortable finding running the chamber. So this has been like coming up as a discussion a few times. Running chamber on this map in general. I know it was part of the discussion we had in comps and going into the season, going into kickoff. Because look, this is the thing with the chamber. He has great TPs. You can play him interchangeably with Vito as well, who has even better TPs. But he has great TPs. Just like hold Langwood out. He loves these long lines. He loves this line as well. He also, if teams aren't like hard fighting a lobby, he loves this line as well. But the problem we always had with him, the problem everyone always had with him, was he just can't play into Yoru at all. Because you're trying to hold a long line from, let's say you're holding this line. You're holding this line, like Yoru just TPs behind you and kills you. Like Yoru TPs here, even if you TP back to, I think like back here, he kills you. And stuff like this, right? And with the flashes, obviously knock you off of lines super hard, even though you had quite a low flash comp in general on Pearl. So, I mean, we were the best, on energy, we were the best Pearl team in the world, I think, last split. I mean, people can argue about this, but we went 4-0 at Santiago. We never lost a map. Longshim had to permaban it, basically. We beat Paper X on it twice. We were like the best in the world. And we were running, Waylay, Teo, Sova. Killjoy and Astra, right? And it just worked. But the thing we always had with this comp that we were concerned about was, what if teams play something like Chamber into us because we have no flashes? But we kind of got away with it because nobody was willing to play Chamber at that time because Euro existed. That's the problem. Like, these comps don't exist in isolation. People tried the Phoenix against us and stuff like that as well. I think we lost. Did we lose to G2 on it during the regular season? I believe we did. Yeah, we lost. We got like hard stomped by G2 in the regular season, for example, right? But then no one else really played like that, so it was fun because they played Yoru, they played Phoenix, and they played Vito. And to be fair, we played really badly on the day as well. We played very stupidly around how we were supposed to play against this. But it's like completely stomped us, right? But no one else really played against that. No one else was playing like that, so it was fine. But we were able to get away with this comp. We had 0 flashes the entire season, and only one team exploited it. And Paper X tried to exploit it. They ran Phoenix as well, because they kind of saw the same thing with regards to this. But with regards to that, you put out a bunch of walls and this team has no flashes, then this team's going to be very easy to play against. I'm going to game up actually here real quick. So people remember this game. It was close. NRG Paper X, this was the upper semi-finals. We played our comp. They played Yoru, Vice, Phoenix, Astra, Sova. It was like very specifically a hard counter comp, I think, to what we were doing. It's probably one of the, in Paper X fashion, it's probably one of those comps where they've played it a million times and they've played it in the past. It's a comfortable thing as well. But this was we pretty quickly understood this is what they're trying to do with it, right? They're trying to exploit that potential comp weakness. And we basically gritted and grinded our way ahead of it, but it was not a easy game at all. But yeah, we're seeing a shift. Yeah, go.
More generally, you're going to see as a symptom of the kind of meta we've just been through with this Yoru, right?
Yeah.
Yoru was a crutch character at its core.
Yeah.
And it was a crutch character in the sense that it allowed you to basically have an extra character slot because he does so many things. He entry frags, he smite flashes, he provides so much that it basically was a crutch character, and it allowed a lot of comps that would not have been allowed back in the day, right? And you're going to see that now where teams are forgetting certain parts of how the game works because they spent so long on the Yoru, right? So maybe you're going to see a lot of teams realizing, oh, wait, we needed a flash in this comp against the Chamber. So, for example, people think Chamber is really strong now probably because of no Yoru, right? And then you're going to realize when the other team starts bringing out, Skye, KO, it doesn't matter, anything that can flash with the angle, you're going to have that push and pull with the meta again. Whereas for the first 2 weeks, people are going to be super slow at realizing it because of the crutch character that existed for almost, God knows how long.
Yeah.
I think that's what you're going to see. And I think this Pearl game is almost it shows it, right? Whereas Navi have a comp that just straight up is a mismatch
Yeah.
when you don't have the Yoru. And the next game you saw, again, this chamber is a mismatch until a team brings out a correct comp, and then suddenly, again, it's not as much as a mismatch, right? I think that's almost what you're seeing, and you're going to see for another week, and then people are going to catch on to this.
Yeah. I mean, the point you're making there about in terms of crutch characters, in terms of, like, you need a certain amount of things in the composition in general, right? I think that's going to make it really interesting what happens to Skye as well. Because obviously Skye's kind of one of the only initiators that hasn't got nerfs, that's actually got buffs, with the rechargeable stuff coming back. Roan, you have a dog, you don't have scan. So it's kind of being perceived to... It's hard to, like, hit sites, it's hard to, like, basically map out stuff for that. Obviously, before you had the mid-round util with it as well, like, you don't have a scan for mid-round as well. Now we kind of have this situation where mid-round util doesn't exist anymore in the first place. You get, if you're lucky, 2 pieces of util. When your recharge comes back, maybe you get it for post-plant. And Pearl, like, there are certain maps where just mid doesn't exist, basically. There isn't, like, you're just hitting sites, you're going back and forth when you're hitting sites over and over again, right? Pearl's like an interesting map because, in theory, there should be a bunch of stuff you can do around mid. But I don't, like... Almost every team, the only team that doesn't play like super far off of mid or like tries to trap mid basically on defense and doesn't really actively contest it, but mostly plays for sites. The only team that doesn't play like that, I would say, is probably G2. G2 are quite active in terms of how they play around mid, but everyone else, which is why we had trouble with them all the time, everyone else doesn't really play for mid. And in that sense, you kind of get a situation where, okay, does this limitation of Skye where she can't scan stuff, does it really matter? Because if you can just walk up to a lobby, let me just clear this real quick, but if you can just walk up to a lobby, let's say you can walk up to like here, and then you can probably get smoked, and you can probably walk up quite safely to here and have people positioned, right? A lobby, people aren't fighting as much for it as well, you can kind of probably get to here quite safely. And if you can get close enough, and you can just use the drone, and you can just run through the drone and clear every angle you want to, basically, right? Do you need a scan? That's the question, right? And but we ran double drone on this map. So we had both Teo, and we had Sova. So Sova is a scan still, but we don't really care about the scan so much. We care about the drone. Teo drone as well. And we were literally just doing this thing where we just walk up to here. One drone sends it right, one drone sends it left. We've cleared everything now. We go in. And that's it. So I'm kind of wondering if we're going to see this evolution, because that was always the thing that held back Skye in terms of being used as a signal initiator, because she can't scan. I think there's an argument to be made that doesn't really matter anymore with how the util works and with how a lot of these maps work. Particularly Pearl's a map which is going to be, I think, in the middle, right? There are certain maps where it's very obvious that basically mid doesn't exist, and this probably makes sense. Like the obvious one is Split, right? Split, where you have never been able to run Sova, for example, because unless you're Doom Bros. If you're Doom Bros, you can run Sova on Split, but if you're not Doom Bros, you can't run Sova on Split, right? Because it doesn't, the scan's hard to use, doesn't really do enough. Mid doesn't really exist on that map. It's very right? You're going from lobbies all of the time, essentially. On that map, Skye is already kind of in full force, going to continue to be that way. There are certain maps in which you're going to need the scan ultimately still. I think probably Haven, for example, because of how the Haven site's laid out. I don't think the using double drone really does enough there, and there's just too much stuff to go through. But Pearl's going to be interesting, because I think it's going to be in the middle of a lot of map pools. It's going to be like the third map a lot of the time. And this is kind of going to be like a thing that defines the meta in terms of, okay, is this true? Can you just not run scan, just run Skye going forward? And what does that mean for the comps? Yeah.
I think there's going to be two evolutions on every map, which is one which you just mentioned, the double droning and the overcompensation, basically. And then you're going to see the other one, which is people still trying to play double duelist, but probably PRX style with the Skye raised jet, basically. I think that's what you're going to see. I think a lot of people, there might be teams who are still trying to play as if they have a Yoru without the Yoru, and I think those teams are going to struggle a lot. But I think the teams that are going to do good are the ones that PRX just naturally fall into the, Skye jet raise, just double duelist, same logic, same, a kind of abusive way of playing, or you're going to see people overcompensate and basically become really slow, almost, old Navi style, old Giant style, right?
Yeah.
I think probably the teams that adjust to new way of playing double duelist are the teams that will do better, but we'll see, right?
Yeah, I mean, the teams playing double duels as well are going to be like put through the ringer because Neon's getting nerfs, Yora's already gotten nerfs, Wader's getting nerfs.
Yeah.
I think, to be fair, I think at least 2 of those duels are still going to be very, very good, and people are going to overestimate the nerfs. Probably, I don't think the Waylay nerfs them out as much as people think, but she wasn't in an amazing spot in the first place. To be fair, she was like a little bit overrated, and then I can see either Neon or Euro will basically turn. It just turns out these nerfs don't matter at all. Like they just.
I'm
Don't.
interested in the Yoru one because on one side, 2 flashes was a lot. On the other side, he still can do a lot of the things he did, just less obnoxiously almost.
Yeah.
So I am interested if like people just taking Yoru out everywhere is overreaction, especially if you have a guy like Martin. But yeah.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see in any case. So I think that pretty much wraps it up for this week. And we covered some good ground. We're gonna try and do this on a weekly basis, essentially. We're gonna. If you have any comments, any suggestions in terms of format, in terms of any of that stuff, put it in the comments. We kind of. Yeah, we weren't expecting to making the show like 10 days ago. We're kind of still trying to feel all of this out and feel out like what's good, what we can do that's going to be appealing and interesting, all that sort of stuff. Any closing remarks, Salah?
I think the game is in a healthier state without Yoru. And I think we're going to be seeing a lot better Valorant and we're going to see people struggle to play the same way they used to play.
Yeah.
So I'm excited.
Yeah, it should be interesting coming in towards this split as well, because this is a split where teams start to look good. Right, kickoff is always a little bit of a weird thing where
it's always a coin toss. There's always teams that just hatch a good role and just run with it, and then they fall off for the rest of the year. And I think you're going to see teams like Fnatic are going to come back into the year as they always do and do really well. And I think that's what you're going to see.
Yeah. So let's see. We'll see who's playing a long game here. But that about wraps it up then. So thank you for watching. Hope to see you next week.